It's different, I think. It looks different and it smells like food and I like it because I'm hungry. Oh.
Shut up. I got you. I got you.
You put it on your phone? I got it. I'll dance with you. No.
You keep me. I promise you, you'll find yourself afloat.
Hi-yo.
I got her song for her.
You got a song?
Yeah.
Jump around. Jump around. Jump around.
I don't know if you do that. I love the song.
What's the song?
Another one by my queen.
You play us some, huh? Got a journal question for you. No, not your average U.S. history kind of question.
You need hot water. I ain't just think out loud. You need hot
Why does it matter? Are you gonna ruin that thing?
I already got mine.
Yeah, wait a minute. I'm gonna
Another
do
one buys, another one buys, another one buys.
Hey, I'll go ahead and answer that one out loud. You need hot water and you steam the dang frog and then you boil it like a frog. Hot, spicy. I wonder if I can do it this way. You think I can do it this way? Hey, you don't think I can do it this way?
No.
Hey, you got hot water.
Don't touch it.
No, it was late.
That is hot water. Hey! You're not going to say, you know that? I want to see what I now you tell me. Anything wrong. It's very late. It's not good.
Yeah.
Don't put the word very, very hot.
Let's go away now.
That's what like this.
All right, pull out your journal, the gray page.
Another one bites the dust.
If you don't know how to boil a frog, can you just guess?
Yes.
Okay.
As per the usual, there are no wrong answers. Some salt.
Get some hot water, throw it in it.
As he's joining our boil it.
How hard is that?
You just boil it.
It is. America, they learn how to boil frogs.
Boys can stay over there.
Oh, it's a classic boys versus girls day.
No, it's just David.
Hey, I stand my ground.
James for
Hey,
sure.
excuse. What is
I'm pretty sure it will.
So, you got notes on your desk, pass them out to everybody.
What's the date?
What is September 18th?
Today's the 6th.
Hey, number.
Wait, it's the 11th. Yeah, it's the 8th. The 8th, okay.
9/11.
You get me out.
Some.
How do you boil?
You water.
I'm tired.
Can
And.
I be here? Can I try it?
We're made around the school yet?
Can I try it if it's wrong? I want to try it.
I'm willing to bring in griddle, I'm willing to boil some water, I'm not willing to give a student a bacon roll.
Look, whatever you cook, I will eat. I want to hold it before you kill it.
Yeah, what are you cooking on?
Because you're adventurous or because you're hungry?
If it's both.
Oh, I haven't. You answered my
Yes.
question.
And it's very thorough.
Alright, so when you answered for yourself, you're gonna chat with your shoulder partner, but hear me on this. I'm then gonna ask you what your shoulder partner said. So you better listen. So I'm gonna be like, Lindy, what is Ezzy's answer? So you better listen to what your shoulder
Can I
partner has to say.
reword frog?
Huh?
Can I reword frog?
What time? What is the synonym for frog?
Oh, frog. Okay, so you're my shoulder partner. You're my shoulder partner.
Yeah, I'm not.
I do not want to be in a trio. I'd rather be in a
Oh,
one.
I'm your shoulder
I
partner.
want to be in a
Alright,
one.
bring me your answer. No, I said, bring me your answer.
It's in my head.
Bring me your answer.
No.
How do you need to answer this question?
How do you answer?
Oh, that's the on there. What's up?
Why can't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Some hot water. And throw it into the lawn. That they will.
Alright, shoulder partner.
Come on.
I'm the teacher, not right.
Come on.
James, make sure those two have that page.
You got it, mate?
Oh,
They got it. Oh, that one. Oh, I got four of them.
Can I tell you mine?
yeah, then you're gonna tell her. Ooh, I got step by steps here. Like y'all all about your secret sauce.
You know.
Some slapping on the Cajun sauce.
Okay, I will drink a basic white girl.
Check this
So
out.
that's
Check this out.
James, please stop.
No, it's just, what do you want to know?
Oh, it's
offensive. I'm not basic.
Alright, you two, have you told each other how to boil the frog? Share with each other.
Are you gonna blow?
Shoulder partners.
Do you have a frog?
Shoulder partners, share with each other.
Do you have a frog?
Well, autocorrect over here is the slow one. Share with each other. Share with each other.
I'm
You
not
boil
basic.
it.
Throw it in there. Well, that's what she said. Is my shirt on?
That's what she said.
I mean, I am sometimes. Wow.
Omar, what is Alex's answer for how you boil a frog? Huh? Oh, the point was he had to listen to you. What is
We
Alex's
need to talk
answer?
still. Oh, yeah. We
Oh,
forgot
all
to
right,
say that.
give the girls a minute.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, see my spit my mom gave me.
There's like, so I added 2 more steps since you left. So.
Oh, okay.
I gotta remember all these.
Huh?
I gotta remember all her steps.
Yes.
There's 7. Bruh.
You can write it down.
Okay.
Yeah, I might allow you to use the full notes. Hurry up. Not coffee.
What is it? Seasoning?
Not seasoning.
Ramen noodles.
Ramen noodles.
For real?
Okay. We're done.
For real?
I'm on the
All right. Omar, what is Alex's answer?
Cut off the legs.
Okay. I thought that was the tastiest part.
Yeah, probably.
You use the legs. You use the legs.
Oh,
Why don't you use the gut?
You peel the skin off. And put it to boil. Put salt, pepper.
Salt, pepper, and what? What's that?
Spicy crab.
All right, okay. I feel like I got a whole recipe book over there. You will. Alexia, what did Nicole say?
She says, you skin it, boil water, season it, and stick it in boiling water. And then you plate it, and she says, go with hot sauce. So
Hot sauce. What kind of hot sauce?
I feel like
Texas Pete?
Where's the
Okay. You got it. So y'all have been focused on the eating portion of it. That's actually what Jake, what did your partner say is how you skin
He
frog?
said, I ain't gonna give you mine yet. I'm the teacher, so I know I have the right answer.
As a matter of fact, I am the teacher and I have the correct answer.
Did you boil
There
the
is
frog?
no-
Is there a frog in there?
Here's how you boil a frog.
No, it's Roman noodles. But don't ask that. I figured it out.
Really? Can I eat them?
Here's how you boil
I want to see
a frog.
what you do. Oh my God.
Here's how you boil a frog. What you cannot do is throw it into a boiling pot of water. If you throw a frog into a boiling pot of water, what's it going to do?
Jump out.
It's going to jump right out.
If he runs away, I'll kill him.
So what you do,
You kill it and skin it.
put it into a bathtub of water.
Oh.
Not scalding hot, not boiling hot, but in a bathtub of water. He is a squirmer.
Can I eat it?
Oh, Jane. Put it in oil.
Throw this there. You're
You
gonna
put
run
it in
away.
a bathtub, and what you do is you gradually turn up the heat.
I'm trying my best.
When you gradually turn up the heat, now he's active for a second, but he's gonna get cozy. He's gonna get cozy. Does anybody need to confirm that there's a frog in here?
I want to.
Y'all kind of go ahead, come up. Don't take the lid off. The lid is key until it gets cozy. There is in fact a frog in here.
Yeah, it ain't wrong.
What's up?
Here.
I'm gonna give you-
Yeah, let me give you the
When he settles down
He's a baby. No.
and we continue to turn the heat up,
I want to eat
He
it.
dies and gets
he will stay put until he's cooked.
I want to eat it.
This is, now we are going to cook the frog today. We're going to boil this frog. This is an analogy, an illustration for the road to the Civil War.
Can we have a funeral afterwards?
Our country,
No,
like this picture,
because I
right?
will eat it.
Hey, don't let the illustration get in the way of what I'm supposed to teach, what I'm trying to teach you here. This is our road to the Civil War. Our country did not just jump to war. If it had been a single hot spot, we would have been like, wow, those are radicals. Those people are crazy. We're not following them. But one event at a time turned the heat up gradually until our country was at a boiling point and we were cooked. We had to go to war.
I smell something. It's a frog.
All right, come check it out right now. He has chilled out. Because the water is warm. The water is warm. He's not dead. He's relaxing. Soft. Until.
I told you about fall back and you'll be good. You're gonna trip over that. That's like the second time you've almost tripped over that, and I've caught you both times.
I haven't even seen it the first time.
All right. Now this is going to be our lasting analogy for the day. We have several things to talk about. It's the notes in front of you. One event at a time. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to invite you one at a time to come up here and turn the heat up just a little bit. Turn the heat up just a little bit. Each event that we talk about, we turn the heat up just a little bit more until we have a roiling boil and our frog is totally cooked.
Can I eat him?
No.
Why not?
Strange question to ask. Ezzy,
Why
what's
not?
So, yes, I will. I will be able to point out, I'll say, this is the key slide. Now, Ezzy, with that, as I grow your brain, you do have to continue to summarize in your own way, right? Okay?
Not right now.
All right. Here is, this is the road that we're going to walk. It's a long and winding road. If you look at your notes, you got a long and winding road. The war did not happen just overnight. It was not 1 year, one president, one event. It was a long road to the boiling point that led us to the Civil War. So this is a lot for one day. It is. I'm layering story on top of story, taking us to the Civil War. An extremely interesting and important part of U.S. history. Guys, I got a lot of the Civil War right here. I got more up here than it can ever come out of here. So I'm going to do my best to give us kind of the basics. And what I hope I'm creating in you is someone who wants to learn, someone who's curious about history. And even as you sit here at age 15 and 16 and you think, oh, yeah, school. Someday, I hope that you'll remember that day that my crazy U.S. history teacher blew a frog. And it was the lead up to the Civil War. Yeah, so let's go. Boom, we're going to end the war. First of all, our first two events are review. So we should go pretty quickly as we discuss these first two events because we've already come to them. Pencils are a good thing to have in school. First one is the Missouri Compromise. Remember, this is the year 1820. So our class today is going to take us all the way to 1860. Story of us is going to take us all the way to 1860. This is 1820. So we can see we got 40 years to play with. None of this happened like that. It was all the slow boil and the heat turning up. What was the Missouri Compromise? We talked about this last week already.
It's the 3630 where the North is free slaves and the South is slaves.
Good. Ezzy, I would say you could probably summarize this in your own words because of how much we've already drilled the Missouri Compromise. James is exactly right. He said the key part, 3630. North is what?
Free slaves.
Determined to be free. South is territories can be admitted as slave. Why does Missouri get to be in the name of it?
One of the states.
It was the state that petitioned to be added, and at the time, what was our union? At the time, it was a perfect balance. So if we add only one state, so what was the what was the solution? Two states at the same time. What was that cheeky little? What was that? What?
Eminem.
Him, Missouri and Maine. We could have got the Missouri Compromise. Well,
Yes.
yeah. Summarize the Missouri Compromise.
Eminem. Each to the point.
Summarize the Missouri Compromise. Lexi, you don't have to write every statement, right? This is
What did James say a while ago?
3630.
That's all I have. I'm gonna feel bad if I just write that or Mario.
I'm not.
Listen, guys. Some students like the fill in the blank notes, right? Looking for one word. Some students like the space to write. I try to do both kind of notes across a week. This is you writing what you need to write about the Missouri Compromise. Summarize it in your own words. Some of you like to write every word on the screen. This screen, that's probably a little too much. Some of you can summarize, you should get to the point where you can summarize in your own words. Oh, hey, buddy. Hey. Okay, he's going. Missouri Compromise. This happens under President James Monroe. That's why I already taught it to you, but it is something that walks us closer to the Civil War. The Missouri Compromise, kind of like, our country's bleeding out. We have this big issue, slavery, slave versus free. We're bleeding out. It's like a gunshot wound. The Missouri Compromise is kind of like putting a Band-Aid on it. You ever put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole?
Hey, that's actually a song by Morgan Wallen.
By Morgan Wallen? By Morgan what? Morgan Whalen? Morgan Whalen? Well, I like to quote the great American philosopher. Taylor Swift, who says, Band-Aids don't fix bullet holes. You say sorry just for show. If you live like that,
I'll show you the song.
We love Taylor
you live
Swift.
with ghosts. Band-Aids don't fix bullet holes. So what I want you to take out of the Missouri Compromise is that it's a big, gaping bullet hole of a wound, and putting a Band-Aid on it is not going to fix it. We may have fooled ourselves into thinking we've solved the problem, but we have certainly not solved the problem. We've only put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. Give me a couple more seconds on Missouri Compromise here. You get her back right for graduation.
I actually do type a lot
This
faster
is
than
going to be
I
a good
write.
frog boil, I can tell. This one might even have edible legs. Not for Nicole.
Why not me? It's my fault you're gonna be edible.
When Sayla busts in here and sees a boiled frog on my desk.
You can surprise.
All right.
Like all.
We should end it. We should finish the time. I'll go back if I need to. So here we have it. This is the heat being turned up gradually on our frog in 1820. Who wants to come up here and click it one step harder? We'll go James and then Nicole. James, this is your only time.
Turn it up.
Turn it to one.
It's so
There you go.
There you
All right.
go.
It's on one. It's on that heat double down, boiling the frog. Band-aids don't fix bullet holes, keep that in mind. Second review, this should be simple, we've already talked about this. The Second Great Awakening, tell me about it.
Religious church.
Religious-
Christianity.
It's
Religious
they wanted
revival.
to be closer to God personally.
That's right. Who has access to salvation?
Everybody.
All people, that's a big deal.
And Christians.
What does temperance
It's-
mean?
No alcohol. It
What
says
does
right
temperance
there.
mean? That's
Oh,
right.
no, it's right there, I did. I'm
Alright, so
sorry.
you guys are shooting a lot at me and I like it. Christians are generally people who want to do good in the world, right? The Second Great Awakening was a very long period of a religious reawakening. It lasted over 100 years. So this isn't something that happened in one day, 1 year, one president. This happens over a very long time. That's why we've already talked about it, and that's why we're still talking about it. It's a lengthy change as it relates to the morality of the country. One of their big movements was temperance. Temperance means no alcohol. Dad drinks alcohol, dad punches mom and kids, that's bad for the family. Christians value good families, that's why they are opposed to alcohol. That's one movement. Second movement, women's suffrage. What is suffrage?
Right to vote.
You guys will never, we've drilled out enough that you guys will never forget that. Suffrage is actually, suffrage is actually Latin for the right to vote. It's not suffering, like that CrossFit workout made me suffer. Suffrage means literally the right to vote in Latin, so that's where that word comes from. Who was one of the key leaders?
Yeah, TJ ain't here now. I got all the
We- We're going to talk about women's suffrage all the way until 1919. So this is not an issue that goes away from the Civil War. It is just one of the many that contributes to the fight for equality. And arguably, women are still fighting for equality in some places today. Have the right to vote, but still fighting for right equality. Improve public education. Access for who?
all color
Oh,
and white.
What was the big, amongst many reasons, but what was the big why?
So people have to think. Yes.
Vote. You mean we're gonna let those bumpkins
Yes,
from
right.
Alabama cast a vote for president? Well, they better go to school and get educated. So,
Hang on.
to this day, this is still an issue. I read an article just this week, it's 2022. I read an article just this week that was talking about uneducated voters. So this is a problem that still exists today. The article was kind of critiquing public education, saying we're not doing a good job of teaching kids.
You're not.
And, well, hey, as much as it's up to me, I'm gonna try to fix that one classroom at a time, right? I can't save the world, James. I can't save the world, but I can try to fix one classroom at a time.
In school, they don't teach us how to vote. They
They teach you how to think critically. I'm never gonna tell you who I voted for or how to vote,
Not that,
but I'm gonna teach you
how
how
to
to
vote. Still.
Do like Mrs. Swartz.
Yeah.
Do like Mrs. Swartz.
do it like the zombies do. Alright, and then the fourth one was abolition. Abolition is its own vocabulary.
slavery.
That's right. It means no slavery. So breaking the word apart, it means to abolish. Abolish means to do away with. In our class, when we talk abolition, we are talking about slavery. You may want to abolish your bedtime or your curfew. You may want to abolish, who gets to have TV on Saturday mornings. Like you want to abolish your sister's privilege to TV. I don't know. But in class, when we talk about abolish, we're talking about slavery. Okay, that's what that word is going to be referring to. Here's a little extra, okay, and you don't need to write the second paragraph. Just write the first paragraph.
Oh,
Is that good? Just write the first paragraph.
Dadgummit.
The history of abolition actually started in Britain. Britain outlawed slavery about 35 years before we did, right? Sometimes we always think of ourselves as the good guys and the rest of the world is the bad guys. Britain outlawed slavery 30 years before we did. So in America, American abolitionists actually looked to Britain for the model on how to go about abolishing slavery, how to use the courts, how to use the legislature. And these American abolitionists use that as a model for how they attack slavery here in America. This is abolition, breaking the chain, freeing the slaves, all things related to that is abolition. Oh,
I do want to brag. I finished 5 seconds before Linda finished.
Lindy,
Yeah,
how's
you
that?
put your pencil down.
Lindy,
5
how's that make
seconds.
you feel? What a humble brag that was.
Hold
Now-
up, no,
now,
I can
I have a
still-
question
I'm normally
for
the
you.
last one to finish.
Who can be an abolitionist?
Anybody.
Anyway,
Anybody. Women?
Also the nation.
Women? African Americans?
you said not.
White people? People from the north? How about this? People from the south?
They're not, they can, but they're not gonna do it.
Abolitionist is a term that refers to what you believe, not where you're from. So yes, there are abolitionists in the South. I say they're behind enemy lines, right? They're fighting to break slavery from behind enemy lines, like where there actually is slavery. There are abolitionists in the North, of course. That's where they're more prevalent. But how about this? Is everybody in the North an abolitionist? No. There are people in the North that, one, maybe didn't care, right? It's just a whatever issue to them. They're free, and that's all that matters. Or two, there were people in the North that were for slavery. It's just they happened to live in the North. They probably didn't own slaves because they lived in the North. They could still be for slavery. So an abolitionist is not one type of person. It can take on all shapes and forms. And here's a couple right here. I'm just going to go over these couple real quick. But anybody know who this is? Frederick Douglass. What is notable about him?
He made a book.
He's a writer. Yeah. He's an Underground Railroad. He's a runaway slave. So when he escaped slavery, it certainly makes sense to think that he would want to help others escape slavery.
He talked to
He did talk to Lincoln. He had direct meetings with
Harriet
during the war. This is a guy you probably don't recognize. His name is William Lloyd Garrison. He was a writer. We talked in the Revolution the difference between the writers and the fighters. No need to write anything right now.
Hold up, I got a question.
Okay.
It's gonna bug me and talk to him.
Tell me.
There's 5 people there, you only got 4 names.
Yeah.
Okay, you check. Let me finish.
Because aren't they sisters, don't they, Alexa?
That's one of it, and then
Wait.
And Susan Leanne.
I'm
Let me
I'm
finish.
lost. I don't know what they're talking about. I'm lost.
Shut up!
Eh.
The names I have listed don't match exactly, don't match the faces I hope. James, thank you for being the first one to point that out all day.
I'm sorry, but
He's a writer, okay? He's a white guy. You might think, why is he trying to save African Americans and not even his own race? Because he likes people. Because people want to make sure there's no bondage in the world. That's William Lloyd Garrison. This is one of the sisters, right, called the Grimke sisters. I wish I had a picture of both of them, but I couldn't find one. What's notable about her?
she's white.
Huh? She's white. What else is she?
She looks like Susan Leanne.
She's a she,
She
right?
looks like Susan Leanne.
But it's not. In a man's world, she's a she. She and her sister were notable writers and speakers. So it's significant that they were able to make their mark in a man's world in the 1840s and 50s. Anybody recognize this good-looking fella?
That is William Lord
It's
Garrison.
not, because the names are out of order. Sorry about that. It's John Brown.
Lord.
It's John Brown.
Oh.
We're going to talk about John Brown.
You
here in
didn't
a
say
second.
that. That was
And then this is Harriet Beecher Stowe. She's also a writer. She writes perhaps the first New York Times bestseller ever, right? She writes a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin. And it sheds light on how terrible slavery
Never seen
is. Same thing about her being a woman. It's notable that she's like a 5'3", featherweight, but she has a powerful voice. And in fact, Abraham Lincoln met her later in the war, and he says, "Oh, so you're the little woman who caused so much trouble and started this war." It was a joke, but he was saying you're pint size, but you still had a very powerful voice, and you kind of led to the rumblings that led to
Can I go back?
What's it name?
Harriet Beecher Stowe.
Can I go back there and kill him myself?
Why?
With thinking on my size.
On your what?
I mean,
This, to make the screen even busier for you, here's a whole list of abolitionists. I'm not going to go over each one, but you can see different ages. You see both genders. If you knew their stories, you would see that there's writers and fighters. You would see there's people from the North and from the South. And this is just a variety of the abolitionists
I
that were
think
active
that
at
Douglas.
this time.
I think that Douglas.
That's right. All right, here's what we're gonna do, because it's kind of a natural break in our class. We're gonna hit the restroom right now.
Yay!
And when we come back, we'll check on our progress. Go ahead and walk by and check on our progress.
I can turn it
His
up.
name is Jerry.
No. His name is,
No,
yes.
no,
Yes.
no.
Quandale Dingle.
Oh my God.
That should have been.
Jerry's almost
Do
dead.
we name him?
Yes.
Never name the thing.
Yes.
Quandale
His
Dingle.
name.
Quandale
His name is going in my stomach.
He's in the back. He's in the back.
He's going in my stomach. He's going in
It's
my
just a
stomach.
hot tub.
He's
He's
going in
just
my
in the
stomach.
hot tub, guys.
His name.
Look.
He's in the hot tub.
James. Jerry.
Oh,
There's another one. Don't hop on me.
Those buggers
You
aren't-
don't want to throw.
These buggers have had a hard 48 hours.
Huh?
These guys have had a hard 48 hours. They've been in a cup for 2 days.
Alright, now do this good.
Alright.
Hey, frog, you get
Stay away from the drill. Stop, go away.
right.
does.
And it hurt
It only,
myself.
it only takes one student to never be able to do this again.
Okay.
I'm looking at it.
And it will be James. If it is any student, it will be James.
It's posed on Rico.
And Mr. Swanson got to do this demonstration really once. All right, so we've got a couple of new things to talk about now. My voice is tired, it's 4th block, let's just get through it a little bit and we'll be done for today, okay? The analogy lasts. I think you guys see that we are slowly turning up the heat on our country. And I don't know if you're gonna remember everything about the road to the Civil War, but I bet someday you'll be 40 or 50 or 60. And you're gonna remember your weird U.S. history teacher that boiled a frog in class
And we're letting you.
to try to,
You can stay on that.
you know what would really make this day memorable?
But she has to eat.
If I did let her eat it.
It would.
But then you gotta cook toast, but then it wouldn't be fair, and then I wanna eat one.
You could just eat a leg. I was
Slave
like,
rebellions. We're going to talk about 2 different slave rebellions. Let me take you to the year 1831. Nat Turner, he's a slave, but he's also a preacher. He's the preacher to a couple of other plantations around. He goes to sleep. He has a dream. In the dream, he sees the stars align or something like that. Yep, that's it. It's slave rebellions, and it says Nat Turner's rebellion. He sees the stars align, and because the stars are aligned, he believes he's got a mission from God to free people from slavery. So that becomes his goal in life. Now you might be like, a preacher, he's going to go murder people? He thought he was a soldier on a mission, right? He thought he had a right from God or a mission from God to go free slaves. He gets other people to come with him, so he's not just by himself. He has a little bit of an army, and they win a couple bouts, right? They get the first punch in. They actually kill a lot of people. They kill 60 white plantation owners, their wives, their children. So in the end, I mean, that's a pretty high body count. In the end, they are captured. Okay? They don't have enough strength to go on and wage a whole war. And when they're captured, what do you think comes of them?
No.
They are tried, they are found guilty, and they are executed by hanging. That's exactly
Really?
right. That's exactly right.
Good at this, man.
He's good at this history guessing game thing.
I mean, it's
But-
pretty. Back then, that's all they really did was hang.
That one was pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But hey, you gotta make everybody feel
It would be cool if you know what they want with the head.
Gotta make everybody feel like they can.
I feel
Now-
like they're
Off
most.
with the head.
Yeah,
Here-
they're like machines that.
Here's an unintended consequence from that turn.
Easy.
I don't think he meant for this to happen. But in the end, he actually made slavery worse for slaves in Virginia. Here's why. When your slaves rebel against you,
They punish
what are you inclined to do to the remaining slaves? Punish them and make their slavery harder. Now, it's hard for me to even say that. Make slavery worse because already, of course, slavery is bad. But yeah, it made slavery worse for the slaves that remained. So that was a negative byproduct of Nat Turner's rebellion. Here's another crazy thing. This happens in Virginia. At this time, Virginia was like right on the edge of considering doing away with slavery. But then Nat Turner's rebellion happens, and what do you think Virginia does with what it's considering? Oh, no, not anymore. So I always wonder, as a student of history, I'm always like, what if Virginia had abolished slavery right here? Would the rest of the South that followed? Would we have avoided the Civil War? We don't know, right? We can't go back. We don't know. But Nat Turner's rebellion kind of took that off the table because Virginia was then definitely not going to do away with slavery. And then here's one more repercussion of Nat Turner's rebellion. You don't need to write. You don't. Just what's on the screen is what you should write down. Here's another repercussion from Nat Turner's rebellion. Because he was a pastor, slaves were no longer allowed to gather for church. Slaves were no longer allowed to be preachers or pastors. Slaves were no longer allowed to be taught to read. And slaves were no longer allowed to carry guns and hunt. A lot of slaves were actually responsible for hunting and bringing in food for the family. But after this, slaves were no longer allowed to even carry a gun because what if they use that gun against you? So Nat Turner's rebellion has some serious negative side effects to slaves. And it is, James, what's our analogy of the day? What's our analogy of the day? Don't bother writing this down. What's our analogy of the day? Turn it up. Who wants it? Nicole, you do, right? Come click
No,
it.
I do. I want to do it again.
Come check on the Froggo. You know how they say doggo? We should say Froggo. Check on the
Oh.
Froggo.
His name is going in my belly.
It'll boil once it gets to 6. So what are we on, Nicole?
2. 2.
3.5 or so? Yeah, it'll boil when it gets to 6. I'm actually gonna do this for the heat.
Anyways, his name is going in a spelling.
That's weird. All right, that's now Turner's Rebellion. Now, we're gonna skip John Brown for just a second, because I'm gonna come to it in order. What it,
You didn't make one.
I didn't see it. I feel like it'd be a good movie. If they did. Your next term
So
here.
him and his followers were killed, right?
Yeah. The next thing you need to write down is your next word down is sectionalism. So break the word in half. What word do we see?
Section.
Section. What type of sections do you think we're talking about?
Multiple.
Yeah, but what would section us
North and
off?
south.
That's a big one. All right, north and south. Those are
East
two.
and west.
Yeah, we
It
don't
wasn't
really
really there yet.
have a. We don't
Actually,
have
it
a.
was.
It was there, but
Europe and us. East and south.
Don't be distracted by
I was gonna say like.
it's there, but it's not
Race.
thought of.
Okay, north and south. That's geography. Skin tone, obviously. What are some other sections?
Man and woman.
Gender, sure. How about the way people vote?
Yes. Democratic, Federalist.
Politics, and ritual. Those are great sections. That's exactly what this is referring to. It's referring to the things that divide us, the things that put us into sections. The most obvious, when we say fighting the Civil War, what were the two sides? The most obvious is the geography, the North and the South. But that also comes with the attitude of the North, the attitude of the South, the economy and politics of the North, the economy and politics of the South. So I'll let you keep writing this down, but I'm going to give you an acronym, and that acronym is PEGS, P-E-G-S. You can think of sectionalism as the politics, economy, geography, and then the big one, S, of course, is slavery. Yes to slavery or no to slavery. So I see that some of you are still writing. You can have a second here.
Chinese food.
It smells like pancakes. That
Yeah.
gets you.
I don't know Chinese food.
All right, here's pegs. Write down pegs.
Wait,
This sums up sectional differences. I'm going
I
back.
was on Superior.
That's it. You go ahead and just finish that first paragraph. How about that?
I didn't write the second one. That's the only one I'm writing.
That's fine. We are cruising in our class pretty well. I think you guys are seeing that I tell stories to illustrate the key vocab. What you write down is up to you to understand what I've said. I've always said that, okay? Now, 2 words, probably not enough. 200 words?
Okay.
Oh, I got something to say. I finished a minute and 5 seconds before.
Now write down pegs. I do want you to write down pegs.
Come on.
Of course, sometimes I'll
What?
make sure that you write down the right thing. These are the sectional differences: politics, the economy, geography, and the slavery question.
E, G, S.
James.
We don't need to hear.
You made me spell politics wrong.
I did.
Him.
Slavery.
I spelled it P-O-L-O.
So these sectional differences are one more thing that turns up the heat on our frog. Who wants to turn up the heat on our frog? Alexia, go ahead.
She's good too.
Shut up.
We're gonna take it straight to 6.
You should go like this.
Don't work knuckles.
I don't understand.
Turn it towards the screen. Turn it towards 4. The light is like the marker. So you got on 4.
If it's doing
Yes.
that, we'll put you
P-E-G-S.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
I'm on slavery, James.
Jack, please stop. Oh, lucky y'all, I get to take attendance while you're still there.
Pretty sure I forgot to do it.
How did you miss that?
Who missed it? How did you miss that? Don't worry, I missed up for like 2 inches away. I missed it.
TJ there, not here.
That's what I got as well.
Hey, that sounds like legs.
I'm not that bad.
Legs and legs sound the same. That's probably why pirates
Maybe that's what I
have
was
legs.
going for.
That's probably why pirates have peg legs. Yeah, pirates with peg legs.
All right, thanks. Let's slow this down to half speed. These are the regions, again, primarily north and south, but we can also consider the west. Both North and South is actually competing for the West. Like, the Northerners want the West to be slave-free. The Southerners want the West to have slaves. So the slave is still kind of a part of it as
But
well.
now it's still unbalanced because they got,
All right, turn the page over. Next up is the Compromise of 1850. Yes, I believe all these historians hate history students because everything is called a compromise. The compromise, has anybody ever ripped a Band-Aid off? What happens when you rip a Band-Aid off?
Yeah,
Skin
I
comes
do
off,
it,
the bone comes off.
I've been doing it.
James is trying to demonstrate, but I wish that he wouldn't because who knows what else is going to come off with your Band-Aid.
Blood,
Yeah,
skin,
blood,
guts,
guts, and everything.
whatever it is,
So-
look good.
Remember, we put a Band-Aid on the bullet hole. Well, with the Compromise of 1850, we rip it right off. This compromise basically erases the Missouri Compromise. And it's almost like it didn't even happen at all. Now, here's what's irony. Nothing to write just yet. Here's what's irony. Who negotiated the Missouri Compromise? Remember his name? He's not a president.
Henry Clay?
Henry Clay, that's right. I haven't showed you his picture yet. Here he is.
Oh my God.
That is
Yeah.
one ugly.
What is most ugly about him, James?
His face.
His
I
nose.
think it's the ear.
Yeah,
It's funny.
Well, yeah, that does, but it's still his
Well,
face.
this is Henry Clay. He is known as the Great Compromiser. He's one of our
He's
most.
the first one that smiled.
Okay. Why would it be hard to smile in one of these pictures?
Take a long time.
It takes a long time to
Yeah,
take you.
that's right. He doesn't hold
You
stories.
talk that.
That's a good observation.
Do I need to write anything to that?
No. We talked about this guy a lot before. Okay, he's already done a lot. He's the most significant non-president that we've had so far. He has done the American system. He negotiated the corrupt bargain, which is what put John Quincy Adams in president, and he did the Missouri Compromise. Well, here, ironically, he has to erase his old work, Missouri Compromise, and he comes up with another compromise called the Compromise of 1850. Write this down. This is the
All of
Compromise of
it?
1850.
All
As
of
he
it?
should write
Hey,
this one down.
Can we write all of it?
You know,
Yay!
all of it.
Now you're gonna have to wait.
Now you have to wait for
I will.
everybody, not just me.
The Compromise of 1850 is this. California petitions to be a state. California wants to be a free state. So you would think that we've already drawn this line. How come we can't just follow that line? Well, why can't we just follow that line? Well, the line's right here. If we follow this straight across, well, but what's notable about this territory right here?
It's less than.
It's not that it's less. Was it in our possession?
No.
Yeah, it wasn't in our possession when we negotiated Missouri. So people are saying, hey, the Missouri Compromise line does not apply to the territory we didn't have yet. We need a new compromise on top of compromise. So this deals with California, Oregon, New Mexico, and Utah. And the next slide is going to show you 5 things. I'm going to tell you what to write down. All 5 of them do not need to be memorized. I just want you to understand what the Compromise of 1850 is. The first thing is this.
I'm not done.
Huh?
I'm not
I'm
done.
going to get, yeah, keep writing. The first thing is this. California is admitted as a free state. Okay, well that unbalances the union. And that was one of our big concerns, was always having an unbalance. Well, what about Utah and New Mexico? They get to vote on what type of a territory they will be. They get to vote on whether they will be slaves or they will be free. That sounds pretty American, doesn't it? Voting? That's gonna become, it's gonna become the new norm. Voting is gonna become the new norm. And that's kind of the big deal that becomes part of the erasure of the Missouri Compromise. And then what I want you to write from this next screen, are you ready for it?
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. I'm on 5.
Write things
What?
are agreed
What
upon. Write things are agreed upon. Write things are agreed upon. Write things are agreed upon.
THINGSRARN, agreed,
Hold on, I'm trying to spell agreed in my head. I can't have you spelling it out loud and me trying to spell it at the same
And
time.
then upon, UPON. And then.
All right, I'm done.
Oh, you should be.
I got it. I know how to spell agreed.
You don't have to spell 3 dots too.
What I want you to write down is what's gonna be listed as number 4, maybe. Number 4. Number 4
I don't have
refers
room
to
there.
something that's called the Fugitive Slave Act.
Just right for
Just write number 4. What is a fugitive?
Me.
And
I'm
the skin,
Somebody
Um,
who came from the opposite side of the land that they weren't supposed to be.
Someone on the
They're not supposed to
run
be here.
from the law.
From the law.
Someone on the run from the law.
Yeah.
Is what she said, right? Someone on the run from the law. Well, here's what the Fugitive Slave Act does. Hear me on this, all right? I'm talking over you, my voice is struggling. The Fugitive Slave Act says that if a slave escapes to a free state, that slave is not free. That slave must be returned to his owner. So it basically takes away all free areas and doesn't give them any special recognition in terms of a slave being escaped there. So where slaves used to just try to escape to Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, New York, sometimes they escaped through Florida, but now they have to escape all the way to Canada. They'd have to escape all the way to the Bahamas if they were going that direction. What?
So what if they went west?
What do you think this did? What do you think the Northerners thought about the Fugitive Slave Act?
Good.
No, they're ticked off about. Yeah, it's not fair. Northerners, largely abolitionists, and all abolitionists, like, I don't want to return slaves. I believe that they should be free. What do you think Southerners thought about the Fugitive Slave Act?
Yeah.
Yeah, Southerners thought, all right, my investment is more protected, and even if my slaves run away, they're going to have to come back to me. So, divide, right? Sectional divide. One likes it, one hates it. This is like turning up the heat to the frog that's boiling. James, look at one. Give us a little look-see. How's it look? We got some bubbles yet? Oh yeah!
Man, cooking.
Oh
Can I turn it up
yeah!
next?
Look at
Since James
You
went
need
in?
salt.
Yeah, you need some salt.
Should have brought some
You need
salt from lunch. Should have brought some slap your mama from the lunchroom.
What?
Slap your mama seasoning?
James.
Your mama seasoning. This is the Compromise of 1850. It's like putting a Band-Aid on the Western territories. Again, a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, and we have turned the heat up. Now, James, tell me what this picture says to you.
Well, it says just like that photo did. Yeah, no.
Oh, can I try?
Yes, that's all you can.
Oh, you didn't read it?
Basically, they don't know all the things around them, and they don't like it. They can't keep trying to see what's around them and
Who's
what's
the man?
happening.
Who's the man in the picture?
I can't see that far.
It's
It
Henry
says
Clay.
play on his shoulder. You should read it.
He is the great compromiser. And what are his thoughts? What is he saying?
I can't keep doing this forever.
Yeah, what has he done over and over and over?
Compromise.
Compromise after compromise.
He makes compromise that, yeah, he's like, what am I even doing with my life, right? They just keep erasing everything I do. This is our frog taking one step closer to the boil. This is the Compromise of 1850. No, we already turned up that. All right, so someone's about to be mad at me.
I'm not.
For all the writing you just did, guess what?
What?
Write some more.
He gets erased again. Now don't physically erase it. He gets erased with the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Missouri Compromise, gone. Compromise 1850, gone. Here's the new sex act. Kansas-Nebraska Act. This is 1854. What year are we walking towards? 1860, all right, so we're getting closer. Here's what happens. Write the first paragraph.
Only.
Write the first paragraph. Congress decides, they vote for the idea that states can choose their own destiny, whether they will be slave or whether they will be free. This does away with all the other compromises that we've already talked about. So Henry Clay's got to really be feeling down now because his whole life's work is undone. None of his compromises still exist. The new way to determine slave or free is to have the people vote for it. So it does not matter north or south anymore. It is all about the people voting. When that vote comes to Kansas, here's what happens. People who are not from Kansas come into Kansas, they vote like they are from Kansas. And does that make for a fair and honest election?
No.
Absolutely not. So you're going to get battles because of it. A lot of people from Missouri who were pro-slavery, they were coming across the border. They're called border ruffians. James, are you a ruffian? A ruffian means you're a fighter. The border ruffians, they're going to vote for slavery. Well, these jokers aren't from Kansas, so the Kansans are ticked off about that. Kansas abolitionists are called Jayhawkers. What is a Jayhawk today?
Jaywalk.
Anybody? Anybody know?
Nope.
University of Kansas is called Jayhawks, so that has its heritage in the abolitionists. These were not creating abolitionists, they're fighting abolitionists, right? And it leads to this clash leads to something called bleeding Kansas.
Question, what?
In this time frame, 1854, 55, 56, there's a lot of fighting going on in Kansas. Some people would say it's the beginning of the Civil War, but the war hasn't been declared yet. But the fighting that happens in Kansas is called
And the following goal.
Kansas. Now, the next one on your screen, don't write this down. This is the concept of voting. It's called popular sovereignty. If you're running for student council, and it's sometimes it's like the popularity contest. You know, popular means you get the most votes. Popular sovereignty literally means, write this down, write both of these down, it's ruled by the people. What it means is that the majority vote will determine whether a state is slave or a state is free. So popular side, in this class, if I said, hey, we want to have fun Friday, we want to have ice cream or pizza, there's 3 votes for ice cream and 4 votes for pizza. Which one wins?
Pizza.
Pizza.
Right.
Pizza.
Because it has the most votes. We
Pizza, man.
understand that, right? We all understand
Can we have
that
that
the majority wins. Well, popular sovereignty, that's exactly what popular sovereignty is. Majority wins. But in this case, it wasn't about selecting pizza or ice cream. It was about selecting whether to be a free state or a slave state. So that's kind of a standalone vocab word, but you got to understand it to get the whole picture. Popular
For James.
sovereignty.
Wow.
I had to
Wow.
write it down.
Yeah, can we have that pizza party though?
Man, did I write it
No.
down? Yeah.
We gotta vote for that one, 'cause I don't like people. We gotta have ice cream party.
Well, can we just get into the question?
Yeah, we can just kick him out.
Hey, don't kick me out.
We vote on
I have
that.
no
We can
doubt.
vote.
I will walk to that gym and do the thing.
Fred, you had a good time, what he said. Popular sovereignty. All right, this is 1854.
Yeah.
We
Now
didn't
let
have to
me
write
take-
majority wins, right?
Now let me take us to, write the majority wins.
And then everything behind it?
Now, just write the majority wins.
I didn't write the entire thing, man.
I'll go back and look at it, because I just heard you say that.
Majority wins.
Okay, I'm good.
All right, let me take us now to 1857. This is, next year you're gonna take a government class. And in your government class, you're gonna look at some specific Supreme Court cases.
Especially him.
Pretty in-depth. Today, we're gonna just do just a little bit because it fits into our road to the Civil War. This is a case.
You want us to write, did you
Yeah.
skip populars?
No, we done did that.
Was that the one we just did?
Yes.
I just wrote that. I wrote that wrong one.
Draw a little arrow.
I'll go back.
That's funny.
Yes, write down Dred Scott.
Yeah.
Write down the whole thing.
That entire thing is out.
Just the first word outside.
I'll put it, this is the important one.
Man, hey.
Mega.
Who has a letter to talk tomorrow? I can't write neither of them.
You know, third block just write stuff down. You guys have questions about everything.
If anybody has a letter
We
to
gotta
talk
put some
tomorrow, right here ain't small enough.
Here,
You want a whole other pencil?
I can't write small enough.
can you catch, have
Yeah,
those pencil at you?
I'm curious how Froggo's doing.
I can't catch that good.
You just said you could.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, my boy's boiling.
Can I turn the heat up tomorrow? You up?
On Dred
He's
Scott.
already-
No, it's already dead.
Yeah, you know what, Nicole, come turn the heat up.
Oh!
Because Dred Scott turns the heat up one more time. Hey, I'm gonna try to give you the real simple on Dred Scott. He's a slave. He's born a slave. His owner takes him to free states. They live in Minnesota and Illinois. Those are
With
free.
your pencil?
Those are free states. When his owner wants to move back to Missouri, Dred Scott sues for his freedom. He says, "I live in a free state. I should be a free man." Now, I think you guys know how court cases work. You start low, then you appeal to a higher court, and eventually, he appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court makes one of its worst decisions of all time, and it rules that Dred Scott, as a slave, is not a citizen, but is property. He's not a person, he is property. So, hear me on this. Who's ever taken a road trip in a car? Multiple states. Nicole, how far
How
did
do
you
you
go?
think I got here? Not multiple states, that's wrong.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, actually, I went, does Ford count?
I'm gonna go with Alexia
Yeah.
because she's
Hey,
probably
hang on. I went for, I went all the way up to
it's always,
Pennsylvania.
it's always competition.
I went up to Pennsylvania in a big truck.
Okay.
I think that talks
where'd you
about-
go?
South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia.
Alexia, what part sorry, let me cut you off. In relation to Indianapolis, where are you? Well, Indianapolis. is
North
right
to south
here,
of
so where were
Indianapolis.
you?
Oh, that big silver bridge thing you were talking about? Oh, my bad.
Where did you live in Indiana?
Prince.
Okay, then north or south of Indianapolis? North, all right, North Indiana. You start driving all the way,
I'll beat you.
all the way to Georgia.
I'll beat you.
Now, I don't know exactly about today, but did you, when you passed through Kentucky, was the car still yours, family? When you passed through Tennessee, was the car still yours? Yeah. You cut into Alabama, the car still yours? And you ride to Georgia, is the car still yours? Why? Well, I mean, the car was still yours all that way. Why?
It's her property.
Because it's property. The board was saying that Dred Scott was property, and his owner has the right to take him wherever he wants because he's not a citizen.
It's
He's right.
sibling.
Dred Scott's not a citizen, he's property. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if the car thing worked out necessarily, but Dred Scott was property. What a terrible way to think of a human, obviously, because that's saying that he doesn't have human rights. It's saying, ooh, Nicole, come look at it. Come look at it, come look at it. Oh, everybody come look, come look, come look.
All right.
Almost right on time. We are cooked. Yes. Yes. That stinks.
No, it does not. That smells good.
All right, the goal is to not set off the fire alarm today. The goal is to not set off the fire alarm
Is
today.
there a fire alarm in here? And it's like, is that the, no, where's-
I wanna put it on.
that's
Alright.
the fire alarm. I'm gonna put it there. I'm talking about the thing that tells you.
We're fine, we're fine. There's cookies all throughout. Yeah, go
Oh no,
for
it's
it.
right there, everybody. There's one
Yay.
there. There's and there.
Brago. All
Yeah,
right.
here's
Woo! That was big George.
I hope he doesn't hop away.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that's gonna be a concern. So my analogy, it worked, right? We raised the temperature all the way to the boil. Huh?
Get out the way. Fine, right.
The Dred Scott case is a very negative thing in the walk up to the Civil War. Okay, it's gonna enrage Northerners and it's gonna empower Southerners because now they don't have slaves that are humans; they have property. They have property. It's a terrible way to think of a human being, just like your shoes, just like your car, just like anything that is non-living.
I don't own nothing.
Yeah, property.
I don't. My family.
So that is the summary of the Dred Scott case. However, you need to put that into words. Is a good way to do that. Look at that thing steaming.
Yeah, man.
What did we name him?
Jerry.
He's my. Going to be in my belly.
Billy Bob.
It was
Billy Bob. Billy Bob
Billy Bob.
Jr. I read that on my paper and you said scary.
Do you remember sitting by me and we drew on my paper the little face?
Billy
Oh,
Bob
yeah.
Jr.
Scary on the paper.
I'm amused at our activity for today.
His name is going to be in my
I
stomach.
enjoyed it. I hope you did as well.
His name is going to be in my
Hey,
stomach.
I feel like I have to give
Can
you
you go back?
disclaimer. James, don't put your hand on the grill.
Oh yeah, that's smart. Tell him that.
How? I didn't think the water was hot a while ago.
Well, if you see a holy
You see a boiling frog on a hot pan. You're going to
On a
touch the
griddle.
hot pan.
You normally don't put a pan on a griddle. That's
You
just not
really don't even
hot.
bring a griddle to school, but look what happened.
You do want to see how hot it is, okay? Now, back in the 80s, I don't know why, but I see them got all they do is stick their fingers in there and see the hot one.
You remember like 2008?
But see, the one in the 80s, all they did was stick their fingers in there. The 90s, they said,
I'm the oldest one.
and then in the 2000s,
I know.
They
Oh,
got-
wait, hold on.
2 foot away, and they was there popping.
Are you in 10th grade?
She's
I'm
11.
supposed to be. I'm
You are in 10th
I'm
grade.
11 and I'm 17. I'm the oldest one in here.
Wait, 05? I'm 05 too.
What you were, what they were.
What was up? Yeah.
I'm the youngest one in here, I think.
I told
I think I'm
you.
the youngest. My birthday was 2 days before school.
Oldest and
And I
youngest are
turned 15.
besties.
You are the youngest.
All right, let's finish it out, okay? Dred Scott, there it is. That's the Chief Justice, bad man, bad.
Where's the election of
Alright.
18?
Turn back to John Brown's reign. You do not need to write, but hang on. You're gonna write the next slide, all right? All right, hear me on John Brown. A very amazing story, and I'm just gonna give you the short version of it because that's how much time we have. John Brown's first raid happens in 1856. So take a step backwards. In Bleeding, Kansas. Remember the two sides are battling. He is a rabid abolitionist. He is not the praying kind. He's the fighting kind. He is one of those jayhawkers that sticks it to slave owners in Kansas. He also believes he has a mission from God, just like we've seen several people so far have a mission from God. And he, on his mission, he and his sons, they go out and they snatch this slave-owning family out of bed in the middle of the night. They drag them into the streets. They berate them for being bad people. And man, they kill them where they left. So they murdered this slave-owning family because they were slave-owners.
Yeah.
Being that it was Bleeding, Kansas at the time, do you think that the law really came and tracked them?
No, not at all.
Yeah, no, there wasn't any consequences. There wasn't a trial or anything like that. In fact, he kind of got empowered through it because he realized that he could kill slave owners and really get away with it. Kansas, there's a lot of fighting going on in Kansas, but it's not really deep South, slave-owning South. So he wants to take his fight to Virginia. He wants to go to Virginia, raise a slave army, and have this slave army start overthrowing slave owners. So he really wants to kind of have this resurgence of the Nat Turner Rebellion. Now this picture right here, this is John Brown, abolitionist. When you see that picture, what kind of a man do you see?
Hi.
See me?
Yes.
He seems very.
I see.
Yeah. That.
The smirk, right? He's clean cut. He's got his church clothes on. I can see him as a dad. I can see him as a church member.
He definitely has those like those three little kids that are really going to a private school. And have
This is
wine.
1856. This is
Well,
1856.
if there was a private school,
Let me
they'd
take it
go-
at 1859. You ready for it? Look at the
Yeah.
screen. Look at the 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 screen.
Look at the screen, James. Well,
What happened? What happened to John Brown?
The beard.
Yeah.
Well, he grew a beard for starters. Yeah.
You got
But
some-
do you see? Are you cross country? I didn't think so. It was from my class. The beard, one thing. What about the eyes? Let's look at the eyes. I think that's the same. I mean, we can clearly tell that's the same guy, right?
No,
Okay.
it's not the beard.
All right.
It's this. He got big and round.
James.
You sit there, Paul.
Those of you familiar with Bible stories or Bible reading,
Yeah.
what was a Hebrew character who set out to free Hebrew slaves?
No.
No name? You don't have to be a Bible reader.
Moses.
He takes on the
I know it's
song.
wrong.
Moses says, "Let my people go." He says it to Pharaoh. So John Brown kind of takes on the idea of being Moses. This is the screen I want you to write. Okay. He left Kansas to begin a slave war by seizing arms and munitions. That means guns and
You
ammo.
want to write this?
Yeah, write this screen right here. John Brown's rebellion.
You mean John Brown's raid?
Raid.
Oh.
It's literally the same thing.
Not really.
I'm gonna give you a second to write, and then I'm gonna finish out his story. It's a super interesting story, but I know we're running out of time. I got two more amazing John Brown pictures to show you to finish out the story of his life. And I want you to keep imagining that Mr. Swanson picture, the one that you said looks like me, and then as we advance the story here, I want you to think if it still looks like me or not. It's kind of flattered, but I also know how the story ends, so I'm kind of not.
He's killed by his hung and
Are you a One Directioner? Are you a Harry Styles guy?
I know.
he hung. He hung. Or he's killed in battle. It's one of the two. I guarantee it.
It is one of the two.
This one would be.
I feel like he's killed in battle, seeing how
He's on.
no,
You
the
wouldn't
last
like
one.
that.
I love that
The
you guys
last
are taking
one-
guesses.
I
The
feel
last
like
one
he
was
was
hung.
Here's
Yeah,
what happens.
Can I go see the frog? I want to see what it looks like.
I'm not done, so don't change it,
I
please.
won't. Here's what happens. He goes to Virginia. He goes to a federal arsenal in Virginia. What's kept at an arsenal?
I can't see.
Guns.
Guns.
Guns and ammo. And this arsenal is huge. Present day, its value would have been worth about $7 million worth of guns. So he's not just robbing the local pawn store, right? He's trying to raise an army. His sons, several white people who are with him, several black people who are with them. They make up the army of about 30 people. They get into the arsenal. Problem is, they get surrounded by the U.S. Army. So now they can't get out of the arsenal. They were relying on local slaves to break free from their plantations. Is it? I need to know what it is. I haven't seen that one. They were relying on slaves to come and join them. The slaves, maybe they wanted to, but it didn't happen the way that John Brown was expecting it to. So instead of having a whole army of slaves, like they didn't have enough, they didn't have enough trigger pullers to really have a rebellion. They're surrounded by the U.S. Army. The U.S. Army goes in, captures, arrests. John Brown is put on trial. And you can see this is kind of what happens on the inside. He gets shot at, there's fire, all that kind of stuff. He's arrested. He's charged. What do you think he's charged with? Treason. This is true. I thought you were going to say murder. Murder would be a good guess because he did kill people. He's actually charged with treason. Interesting. Not treason. You don't need to write this. Not treason against the country. No. Not treason against the country, but treason against the state of Virginia. All right. So because we're so states-based, that is treason against Virginia. Now, this picture, keeping in mind, the next picture I'm about to show you is a portrait, okay, a painting. It's not a photograph, it's a painting. Huh? Well, it's a very famous Civil War painting, and I want you to tell me what you think that the artist is trying to say. I think the artist is trying to say I got John Brown.
win! Was it with the stick?
That's deep. I actually hadn't thought of that. Moses carries a stick in the Bible, so maybe that's what the rifle is. He's got a rifle in one hand. What's he have in the other? Oh, he's on a mission from God. What would you say his facial features are now?
He's more skinny.
Wise, I guess.
He's
He
yelling.
looks like he would be wise.
Okay. Anybody for crazy?
He looks like he'd be someone out the Bible, basically.
Moses. I go with the word crazed.
Hang on.
Crazy.
He looks
James,
like
what you got?
Goliath.
Looks like what?
Yeah, Goliath.
Because he is taller. Now, of course, that's a representation. That's the whole point of the portrait. This is how he was portrayed after the fact. Crazy John Brown is breaking into armories when, his eyes didn't really look like that. He wasn't actually crazed like
wasn't
that.
6'9".
But then he wasn't 6'9", but this is what he's portrayed to look at. Here's how the story ends. He is tried for treason. He is hung at the gallows, so you guys were correct. And the gallows, this is how he was received by the rest of the country. Abolitionists in the North, they saw him almost like a Jesus-like figure. They saw him as being a martyr, laying down his life to fight for others. Those in the South, they saw him as a terrorist. Remember we said the Sons of Liberty like terrorists? They saw him as a terrorist. This picture right here, very, very different. It shows him very, very different. What's he doing in this picture?
I don't see where he's at.
He's the middle figure here.
He's the one with white hair.
He looks.
He looks like he's.
Not being racist or anything.
He's being loved.
His skin tone does look darker. That's true. He's not after.
He got a tan,
He's
man.
giving the baby a kiss or a hug or
He's
something.
giving a baby a kiss and a hug. What kind of a baby?
African American.
Yeah.
So this shows him as very grandfatherly, affectionate, caring. Yeah. This is called the last moments of John Brown. This is him on the way to the gallows. What are the gallows? When I say the gallows, hanging. Yeah. So he kind of willingly accepted his consequences. He willingly accepted that he was going
Except
to
Evans, I
die
got my point of
because he knew that his death was going to be an inspiration, and it was. It was very inspirational to those who wanted to carry on the abolition cause. James?
Okay. I know that you said that they didn't have any trigger pullers, but at least they had plenty of guns and ammo.
What you going to do with guns and ammo if you're not trigger bullets?
You had
You
him.
one person against his hand. That's not.
If you're not going to use the gun and ammo, why are you going to get the gun and ammo?
Two interesting things about the John Brown raid, then we'll move on to Abraham and we'll be done. One, Harriet Tubman was supposed to be there with him. She was supposed to go on the raid with John Brown. She was not as famous then as she becomes, and maybe it's good that she didn't go on the raid because she probably would have died. So very interesting that Harriet Tubman knows John Brown. Two, when on the day that he was hung, there was a lot of military there. There was actually a fear that some abolitionists would try to break him free, try to get him, break him out, break him free. So they had a lot of military guarding the site. One person who was there, now he was not U.S. military, but he was in the Virginia militia, was a young man by the name of John Wilkes Booth.
Man who shot Abraham Lincoln.
The man who shot Abraham Lincoln was there when John Brown hung. And it is said, and John Wilkes Booth was a rabid slavery person. He was rabidly racist. He was against African Americans. He was for slavery. He wanted to see John Brown hang. And that's why he was there on that day. And it is said that when John Brown was hung, it whet John Wilkes Booth's appetite for violence. It made him want to murder even more abolitionists. Now, he doesn't murder anyone else throughout the whole war.
Abraham Lincoln.
He's not even a soldier until he murders Abraham Lincoln. But very interesting that John Wilkes Booth was right there, kind of when it all began. Now, war is not declared yet, but a lot of people will say this is the event that really led us right up to secession. Last one, here it is. Election of 1860. We have arrived, right? The whole thing. Election of 1860 is when Abraham Lincoln was elected president. And you got to know that the next 4 years are going to become the war because he got elected president. Abraham Lincoln got elected president while not even being on the ballot in certain southern states. They hated him so much that even though he was legally supposed to be on the ballot, they didn't even put him on the ballot. He still won the election anyway. It's because the North had so many more people, right? There's more population in the North. So he wins with only 39% of the vote. So you can say he didn't have a majority. That is true. And sometimes it's hard to leave when you don't have a majority vote. But he did get enough electoral college votes to be the president. Abraham Lincoln's election is what truly divided North from South. Certain states seceded before he even took the oath of office. They broke away from the Union before he was even officially the president. A lot of people believed. A lot of Southerners believed that he was going to outright abolish slavery on day one of his presidency. That's actually not what he was all about at first. At first, he was about preserving the Union. But he was opposed to the expansion of slavery. That he was definitely opposed to the expansion of slavery. But he wanted to preserve the Union first and abolish slavery second. He also has a very famous quote. He says that a house divided against itself cannot stand. It will either become all of one thing or all of the other. Of course, he didn't want it to become all of slavery. So by default, he wanted it to become all of not slavery. So was Abraham Lincoln an outright abolitionist? Probably not. He was a unionist. But, of course, he's also the great emancipator. He is the one who frees the slaves officially, legally, all that. The election of 1860 is the real tipping point toward starting the Civil War. Now, let's back up. We have one more section. This is a total summary. All you got to write is 5 words. The summary of the big issues are, I'm just going to pass this, I already said it. We are boiling. The summary of the big issues that divide the nation. 1, sectionalism. 2, the difference in culture. We talked about that in different ways. 3, the economy. The differences in the way they made their money. 4, politics. And those who hated Abraham Lincoln versus those who voted for Abraham Lincoln. And it seems like I'm missing one. James, would you say I'm missing one?
Duh, that's it.
Go, what did I say? What is it? I don't know. Am I missing an issue that divided the nation?
Did you know it?
What is it?
Religion.
I know what it is.
Is it religion?
No, it is not. It's hang on, I know it. Hang on.
Guys, it's right in front of you. You're missing the big one. What's the big one?
Geography.
Summary. Issues that divided the nation.
Slavery. I know that.
Oh.
They know this.
Hey, go back. Go back.
It was so
Can you go
obvious.
back, though?
It was so obvious
Never
that
mind.
you didn't get it right.
Can you go back?
Did she have it? Did your partner have it?
Wasn't the president?
I'm sorry, but she always did Bill. Okay. Who's gonna go first? I know I am. Ain't worth my time to help somebody who runs you.
What, no,
I don't know, something.
Has the window been open the whole time?
Ooh.
Yes.
All right, we are gonna finish with a video. We're gonna finish with a video. I'm gonna set it up for you.
He's dead.
My dude looks good.
Yeah, check out Froggo.
My dude looks
He's not having a good time.
He actually stinks, though. I take that back.
Hey James, don't touch it.
I'm
He
not.
stinks. He stinks. I take that back. He does stink.
Is
He
this
stinks.
wrong with your nose?
No.
That
It's
smells
just-
good.
You're weird. That's it. That's not bad now.
They did it first.
Expired date.
All right, we're gonna finish with this short video. No notes to be taken or anything like that. So sit down, and this video is going to say it better than I ever could. I've done all my talking. Now it's time for the video to show it to you. Some people, hard to believe, but some people don't think that the Civil War is about slavery. Some people think it's about states' rights. Some people think it's about Southern pride. Some people think it was about expressing an agricultural society. Whatever. James, I'm going to show you, this video in the next few minutes is going to show you that it was absolutely, positively about slavery. We cannot deny that 11 states rebelled against the authoritative governments because of human bondage, slavery. So let this video say it better than I could,
I mean,
and
how
then
long
we'll
you,
patch up after that.
how long you,
Yes.
yes, what?
yeah,
Exactly.
It's 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
I see that.
Oh, please. 5.
Was the American Civil War fought because of slavery? More than 150 years later, this remains a controversial question. Why? Because many people don't want to believe that the citizens of the southern states were willing to fight and die to preserve a morally repugnant institution.
Morally repugnant.
There has to be another reason, we are told. Well, there isn't. The evidence is clear and overwhelming. Slavery was, by a wide margin, the single most important cause of the Civil War for both sides. Before the presidential election of 1860, a South Carolina newspaper warned that the issue before the country was the extinction of slavery and called on all who were not prepared to surrender the institution to act. Shortly after Abraham Lincoln's victory, they did. The secession documents of every southern state made clear, crystal clear, that they were leaving the Union in order to protect their peculiar institution of slavery, a phrase that at the time meant the thing special to them. The vote to secede was 169-0 in South Carolina, 166-7 in Texas, 84-15 in Mississippi. In no southern state was the vote close. Alexander Stephens of Georgia, the Confederacy's vice president, clearly articulated the views of the South in March
It's a
1861.
real quote.
Our new government, he said, was founded on slavery. Its foundations are laid. Its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, submission to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. Yet despite the evidence, many continue to argue that other factors superseded slavery as the cause of the Civil War. Some argue that the South only wanted to protect states' rights. But this raises an obvious question. The states' rights to what? Wasn't it to maintain and spread slavery? Moreover, states' rights was not an exclusive Southern issue. All the states, North and South, sought to protect their rights. Sometimes they petitioned the federal government. Sometimes they quarreled with each other. In fact, Mississippians complained that New York had too strong a concept of states' rights because it would not allow Delta planters to bring their slaves to Manhattan. The South was preoccupied with states' rights because it was preoccupied first and foremost with retaining slavery. Some argue that the cause of the war was economic. The North was industrial and the South agrarian. And so the two lived in such economically different societies that they could no longer stay together. Not true. In the middle of the 19th century, both North and South were agrarian societies. In fact, the North produced far more food crops than did the South. But Northern farmers had to pay their farm hands who were free to come and go as they pleased, while Southern plantation owners exploited slaves over whom they had total control. And it wasn't just plantation owners who supported slavery. The slave society was embraced by all classes in the South. The rich had multiple motivations for wanting to maintain slavery, but so did the poor, non-slaveholding whites. The peculiar institution ensured that they did not fall to the bottom rung of the social ladder. That's why another argument that the Civil War couldn't have been about slavery because so few people owned slaves has little merit. Finally, many have argued that President Abraham Lincoln fought the war to keep the Union together, not to end slavery. That was true at the outset of the war, but he did so with the clear knowledge that keeping the Union together meant either spreading slavery to all the states, an unacceptable solution, or vanquishing it altogether. In a famous campaign speech in 1858, Lincoln said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." What was it that divided the country? It was slavery and only slavery. He continued, "I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. It will become all one thing or all the other." Lincoln's view never changed, and as the war progressed, the moral component, ending slavery, became more and more fixed in his mind. His Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 turned that into law. Slavery is the great shame of America's history. No one denies that. But it's to America's everlasting credit that it fought the most devastating war in its history in order to abolish slavery. As a soldier, I am proud that the United States Army, my army, defeated the Confederates. In its finest hour, soldiers wearing this blue uniform, almost 200,000 of them former slaves themselves, destroyed chattel slavery, freed 4 million men, women, and children from human bondage, and saved the United States of America. I'm Colonel Ty Sidgley, professor and head, Department of History at the United States Military Academy, West Point, for Prager University.
Boo! So I want you to keep that in mind. Next time you see someone flying a Confederate battle flag, and they're like, states' rights, right? Southern pride. They'll just do it because NASCAR does it. The next time you see someone elevate Robert E. Lee, right? Oh, he's a good Christian man, and he went with his state, right? He just wanted to fight for forgiveness. I want you to know it wasn't about Southern rights, pride, heritage, or agriculture. It was about slavery. Every Southern Constitution, as it was rewritten, included a reference to slavery, bondage. Sometimes it was labeled that peculiar institution, this thing that makes us our own unique country. Alexander Stephens from Georgia was the vice president of the Confederate States, and he said that the Negro has a natural place in the human pecking order, and it is to be in bondage. That's terrible racism. That's what the Confederate States were founded on. That's why we will fight a civil war. There is a right side, there is a wrong side. That's why we will have 620,000 Americans die over the next 4 years. So, next couple of days, we're going to fight the war. We're going to talk about Abraham Lincoln. We're going to talk about key people. And we're going to reconstruct our country afterwards. All right, let the monster in. Hello.
Can you check my thumb?
Before, what time is it? Yes. So bye. You may get your phones. And as we leave, I got one more thing for you.